you're very well known for doing 12 years in retreat in a cave. And I was wondering, I was wondering what insights from that time are still applicable in your daily life? What are the things that, you took from that time that you still apply day in, day out that's very helpful?
Oh, Daniel, that's a difficult question, really. It was so long ago, and so much water has gone through the bridge since then.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that one does know when one is in a situation where external distractions are minimized, obviously in that, well, obviously up in the mountains, there was not much distraction. How much the mind turns on its own internal entertainment program. And to really, part of the practice, I think, is learning how to gradually become more the master of one's mind instead of the slave of one's mind. Because, we all know this, but when you're in an extended retreat, you really face it, how much the mind dwells in the past or in the future, or just, as I say, it has its own TV program, many reruns of the same programs, of course, the same old soap operas. But, that how easy it is to be distracted, how easy it is to be carried away. And that, there's a point at which you have to say, no, who's running the show here? And really, that has been very helpful, to not indulge in all one's, personal TV shows. And to recognize it is just a movie that we're watching. It's not actually real. Even our memories are not real. They're just our own, version of what happened in the past. And certainly our fantasies are just our fantasies. So that's, it's back to observe the mind at all times. That's really where the key to all the practice.
This is interesting because I guess retreat can show you how, show you these soap operas, like you become more, they seem to be more prevalent then. I remember one time I was on a retreat. It was nothing like your retreats, but I was starting to remember all these things from my childhood, like the TV ads coming so clearly to me. And yes, I go to my teacher and I was like, my mind's getting so clear. I can even clearly remember these things from my childhood. And the teacher said, Tibetan teacher said, that's just distraction, right? That's not your mind becoming clear. So it seems like retreat really shows you how much, you are a slave of your mind in a way. And
absolutely,
how can we get that insight, because that must be happening day in, day out as well. So what's going on there in retreat? You see it a little bit more clearly, whereas in day to day, you don't get the opportunity to see it as much, or what's really happening there? Where's the contrast?
Well, I think that this is the reason why a little formal sitting every day can be very helpful, because that does give a little space in which we can see the distractions as distractions, and then that we can take with us into the rest of the day as much as possible, to remember that clarity of that moment of seeing all the stuff that's going on in the mind and not being swept away by it, because this is the whole point. It's not that we're trying per se to stop thinking, but we are trying to not be the thinking, if you see what I mean. I mean, the problem is not that we think, but that we believe our thoughts. And we are totally immersed in the thoughts. We are our thoughts. And this is the problem, and this is why retreats are very helpful, because they do give us the opportunity to step back and observe the display as just a display, not me, not mine. because there is the awareness that observes. So even at that, I mean, this mindfulness movement is partly in order to help us to disidentify with all our thoughts and feelings, recognize they are thoughts and feelings. Some are useful, some are stupid, but they're not me, they're not mine. I mean, they're just a tool. You know, if we use the mind as a brilliant tool, then we're okay. But when the egoistic, dualistic mind is in charge, since its basic nature is ignorance, we're in trouble because we're slaves to a despotic maniac, you know.
I think you made a really, really important clarification there. So if I heard you correctly, you're saying the thoughts are not the problem. Thoughts are not the enemy. It's identifying with the thoughts that's the enemy, right? And that we can actually step back from that identification.
We can, as you know very well, Daniel, we can, and that's the point. And that gives an enormous sense of space inside the mind, instead of being clustered with our thoughts and feelings, like entrapped. We suddenly, it's all becomes so much more spacious. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, and then they just disappear again. And we can choose what we want in our mind. We don't have to just go along with whatever junk the mind happens to be coming up with. And of course, this is the way to also deal with especially our negative emotions. I mean, there's always been the path towards negative emotions is first to recognize them. And we can't recognize them when we're stuck in, clamped. You've got to have some distance.
Yeah, you need this space for recognition. And this is also tricky about who's the boss in there, right? You were saying you work out, actually you're not normally the master, and you've got to be, you got to take control of your mind in some sense. But part of the problem is being the boss as well, because when you identify with the thoughts, you think you're the ego, you're in control as well. So I guess this space from thoughts allows you to see that you weren't really the boss, and now you have an opportunity to be the master of the mind, in your words. Does that sound right?
Or more, at least. I mean, of course, it's not ultimate reality. I mean, mindfulness itself is still a dualistic perception. There's an observer and an observed. And I mean, it's not Rigpa. It's not, non-dual primordial awareness, but it's already a big step forward, because we are no longer completely swept along by all our thoughts and feelings. We can step back and observe them as thoughts and feelings without being, as we're talking, identified with them. So this is an enormous feeling of inner freedom, that we are not the thoughts, and that we don't have to always believe our thoughts. Why do we believe our thoughts? Because I think it must be true. And so therefore as we observe the thoughts as just as thoughts, we begin to really see they're like bubbles, colored bubbles. So you look at bubbles, they're so bright, they're so shiny, they're so real, and then click, and they're empty. Where did it go? And so this is the point, that we need to really see the inherent emptiness. It's not a philosophical thing. It's an actual experience, that our thoughts are empty in their essential nature. They really are. We can use them, but they don't need to use us.
This is so nice, because actually what you're talking about is really the meaning of meditation in your daily life. So why do you sit down, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's not to feel blissful. It's not, just to, lower our cholesterol, or, I mean, if it does that, that's lovely, but that's not the point. And, the point is, Daniel, very well. I mean, we are like fish in the ocean. We swim all the time in a sea of thoughts. And yet we never examine what is a thought, just as a fish never asks what is water. And so our degree of ignorance of what's going on in the one place that we live and spend most of our lives, it's quite extraordinary, really.
It is.
And the only way to know is to look. It's no good just reading books.